Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new show, Get a Life. I'm your host, Marlene Muir, and we have such excitement today. I have my very first guest with me today, my very, very dear friend and longtime colleague, Andrea Milchick. Welcome, Andrea.
Hello, Marlene. Nice to be here.
It's so good to have you here, and I'm so glad. And we're out in this beautiful day. We took the studio outside today, so you get to enjoy where we live. It's such a beautiful place, which is kind of the antithesis of what we're going to talk about today, because we are going to talk about discomfort. And, you know, this is kind of a conversation that Andrea and I have been having the whole 22 years of our friendship. This conversation, it's been an ongoing one all these years, and we first met at Keene Middle School 22 years ago. And we started talking about where we're where we're going as a society, that we're so intolerant of being uncomfortable.
Right.
And why uncomfortability, discomfort, if you will, is really the grist that makes the human being. Right. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So my first question is, and Andrea is a school psychologist, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but that's kind of important here. So why do you think, as a society, we have become so intolerant of discomfort, and at levels that we haven't seen in a very long time? Can you speak to that, please?
Sure. I think that it dates back to, parents not wanting to have their children experience discomfort or, loss, and whether that's in the classroom or on the playground or on the athletic field. Parents tend to kind of play out their own anxieties and worries and fears for their kids by overcompensating and not allowing them to practice failure. And so it's foreign to them. They don't know how to do it gracefully. And I think that it takes a really informed, strong parent to let their child fail in the parameters of support. And so still rallying behind them, showing them that, it's okay to fall short sometimes, and to do that gracefully. You don't always have to be the best. You don't have to win at everything. But knowing how to step back as a parent and kind of watch your child fail is okay at times.
So it's kind of like walking, for example, or learning to ride a bike. I mean, we all had to do it. It was very uncomfortable. We fell on our face multiple times, right. And yet as children, we kind of have this innate ability to just pick ourselves off our diaper.
Yes. And
keep going.
Right.
And
right.
So let's talk a little bit about, how a parent can, as you say, give that toddler, infant, the space to fall on the diaper, right. Fall down the stairs, wipe out on the bike, knock a tooth out, whatever it takes, and yet not freak and still allow that child to experience that discomfort. How does one do that?
Well, there's different child and developmental theorists that kind of talk about different developmental stages with kids. And, they range from Erik Erikson to Freud to, Piaget. And as kids develop, and I'll use Erik Erikson as an example of someone that has different theories about stages of development, and then meeting success at those different stages, and then what the consequence is for them if they fail to meet those stages. So, for example, Erik Erikson has 8 stages of development, and it goes through infancy all the way up to adulthood. So we'll kind of focus on the first 5, which is through the age of 18, since that's what we're kind of talking about. So the first one is trust versus mistrust.
Huge.
And so when and this is from age 0 to like 1.5. And what children learn to experience is, are they being taken care of consistently? Are they being nurtured? Are they being fed? Are their needs going to be responded to in a timely manner? And so if that is met for them, what they feel is trust. And then they can take that to their next stage of development. If they fail, if being taken care of has been met inconsistently for them, they learn to mistrust. And so they then take that into the world as, it's unpredictable, it's not routine, it's not consistent. They can't really depend on their needs being met. So when you look at the basic virtues, like the characteristics that are formed at that stage, if they're met successfully, that first stage is hope. So
Huge.
kids have hope that, okay, I'm taken care of. I can trust that. The second stage, it happens like roughly around the age of 1.5 to age 3. And that's when kids start to assert themselves a little bit more. You use the example of like falling down on their diaper and getting back up. And that's really like autonomy versus shame. And that's when they're really learning, they're pulling away from their primary caregiver a little bit. They're choosing their own toys to play with. That creative, imaginary, phase. But it's also when their work is around a lot of self-care. So, for example, kids learning how to dress themselves. It's such a basic task, and yet the parent role is to guide, to encourage, but also be there when the child reaches a point of frustration, when the parent needs to step in and assist, but not do for, and that's what often happens is parents, just for the sake of time or efficiency, they then will just totally take over, dress the child, do that for them. And what the child then learns is that I'm not capable, I can't be self-sufficient. So the one virtue that they walk away with, if that's met successfully, is will. So that's a real important kind of developmental
Will.
stage.
So I know and believe that I can do it even if it takes me a few times and even if my colors don't match.
Exactly.
And so I can
Right.
exercise that, and I don't need you swooping over me all the time to fix it.
Exactly.
So what about those swoopers? I think now the new term is helicopter parent.
Yes,
They're all
yes.
hover,
Yes.
hover,
Right.
and do, and oh honey, don't, and the
Yes.
fear that's being put on these kids.
Exactly.
What happens then if I don't get to develop my own will and feel like I have some semblance of control?
Right. Well, it has this long-lasting effect. It starts early, as we know, and it's building blocks. So as you meet success at one level, you then take those skills with you, and so whatever crisis, and crisis can be loosely labeled.
Sure.
You don't have like the confidence to know I can solve this problem, to take it with you to the next step. And so parents think they're doing a terrific job by, overcompensating, enabling, doing for, when in actuality it's a disservice to the child, because they're not learning those skills to know they're enough, they're capable and confident to know. And it's that balance of building self-esteem and then experiencing failure, but not to a devastating effect.
So I can wipe out badly on my bike,
you can
knock my tooth out. Mom or dad are going to come, or big brother, big sister are going to come and soothe me and say, it's okay.
Right.
And wipe my little mouth.
Yes.
And then say, but you know what? You rode halfway down the driveway. Let's try it again. Right?
Exactly.
And then boom. So instead of, oh, well, you see, you hurt yourself. You can't ride your bike.
Exactly.
And then you're instilling the world is a dangerous place and I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. Only you can do it for me.
Exactly.
Don't
And
ever
that's how
take my
that
training.
story gets written. Those kind of pivotal events that happen at different developmental stages when you're bitten by a dog and then you learn, oh, dogs are scary. Well, you grow up feeling like all dogs are untrustworthy, scary. But to be kind of coached through and talked to about, well, this dog, was protecting their territory and
Context.
Yes.
Context is an amazing thing, even for a child.
It is.
And we could go down a really big black hole, but and I see it all the time now, and it just it makes me sad because you see these parents, in the grocery store or in the restaurant, and their 2-year-old is having an epic meltdown because they want fill in the blank.
Right.
And parent says no, you can't have that. Well, then they go into a complete tirade because they've never heard the word no, or they get everything they want. And I know if I throw a fit, then you're going to actually congratulate me and celebrate my fit by giving me what I want, because then I'll shut up. And that's the parent's unwillingness to be in discomfort.
Yes.
And help that child manage, instead of saying, no, we're leaving the restaurant right now.
Right.
Done. Game over.
Yes.
We're leaving the grocery store right now. Game over.
Yes. Right. And so you bring up an excellent point where I think a lot of parents need to rehearse those things beforehand.
It's an excellent skill.
Like what the expectations are, kind of play it out for their child about what's going to happen, what's going to take place. And if they fail at it, instead of avoiding it, never taking your child to the grocery store, never taking your child out.
Or just giving in.
Or giving in, the alternative, which
dangerous.
It's a slippery slope.
Right.
Is practicing that skill, and it may be shorter periods of time. You're not going to take them to a 5-star restaurant at their first trial, but, just practice those skills and until they develop mastery. And then excellent. It's amazing how going out for dinner can be a much more pleasant experience for everybody.
Absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the ability to reason psychologically doesn't really kick in until around age 7, right?
Right.
Am I right?
Correct.
So explain the logic between, this always cracks me up too.
Right.
And again, I'm not a parent, so I can say this, but I've been around enough children and I've taken care of enough children to know you don't reason with anybody before the age of 7, and usually not after 21.
Right.
So, stop. How do we get out of that whole, reasoning thing? Like, well, don't you understand what you did? No, I don't understand what I did. I don't understand.
Living in the moment. Yeah. Right. They're not concerned about that.
Okay, so let's go on to our next stage.
Okay, sure. So the third stage is initiative versus guilt. And this happens, I know, right? Guilt. A little bit of guilt is good.
Yeah.
It's
a good controller.
It is. But putting on too much guilt will kind of break down that excessive children may be slower to interact and to warm up. But what happens at this stage, it's age 3 to 5, and play is kind of a child's job at this time. And so not only do they have creative thoughts about imaginary play, and they form, if done correctly, that initiative, that leadership skill they learn how to lead others through play. If they're tightly controlled, or a parent or teacher, could be either, doesn't allow that freedom, then children they're shyer, they're more reserved, they tend to be followers. So they don't have that initiative to say, okay, I've got a purpose, and that's the virtue that's established at that stage.
So what about I worry for children because we don't allow children to play. First of all, they have the electronic babysitter. Don't get me started on that one.
Yes, right.
And second of all, everything is supervised now by adults. So you have play groups where the parents actually tell the kids what to do, or you're going to something that's already made for you. So all you have to do is do it. And then we wonder why kids are bored with it. And, you spent $200 to go to Legoland and they don't even know how to play with Legos because they never have.
Right.
So, we really need to stop interfering and let children developmentally do that whole creative, figuring out their own doggone fights, picking their own teams. We can't control every aspect of it because that, in fact, is not good.
Right.
So, what's the balance? We've got all of this adult run time. And I also want to address, how we run kids to death, which would be the second part of that question. Sorry, I get excited and I get a little crazy. But let's talk about that. What's the balance between I'm setting up this regulated play.
Right.
Whoever heard of regulated play? I'm going to play because I play.
Right.
Talk
in
about
our
that,
day,
if you would.
right? So you're right. It's overly scheduled. It's strictly controlled. And again, that's the disservice to kids learning to use their imagination and how just being outside in nature, how you can go exploring in the woods, and that can be what they, a stick can become a sword, or a wand, and building fairy houses in the wood. It's just, there's this innocence to it. But if it's so tightly controlled or criticized, that kind of shuts down that natural ability for leadership.
Because then it becomes good or bad, right?
Yes, there's all that judgment.
I'm creative or I'm not. I can draw or I can't.
Exactly.
I'm athletic or I stink.
Yeah.
Okay.
When at the age of 3 or to 5, that really should be just a time to explore, and use your imagination.
Cool. So then we go to the next one.
Yes. So that is the fourth stage is industry versus inferiority, and this happens age 5 to 12, usually, and the virtue that if done well, so often, when you think about this age, kids are in school, they're learning how to read, how to write, and teachers become a real important key person in their life. So encouraging and not limiting potential. Like already having an opinion about what a child can or can't do. At the same time, peers become really important for kids, and that influence. And so, how do I fit in? Where do I fit in? And it's all of that identity. And competence is what evolves from that.
So, I've always believed, and I know you have too, because we've had this conversation, but school, education, in a perfect world, is really about creating environments for all children, no matter where they come from, no matter their early programming, to be able to figure out what they're really good at, what their gifts are, what their talents are, what my natural proclivities are, what they're not, and to be able to really push the envelope, if you will. And even though I have a black hole in my head where math is, I was a really good reader. I was a really
Right,
good speller.
right.
Don't ask me to do math still to this day, but something we have in common. You know,
Yes.
I know. But yeah, talk about that a little bit. You know, this whole teach to the test thing. Don't even start on that. But,
Right.
You know, I mean, there's so many things that we have done, again, to kind of control and condition
Right.
little robots, and then we wonder why nobody is creative and nobody can control themselves, and you know, on and on and on, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where do we go next?
Well, I think for you know, that age span, it's all about kind of exploring different opportunities. And when something clicks, if that's like a skill that you possess or an interest, I think often, you know, there's so much importance placed on athleticism today in schools. And if you're not athletic, then where do you fit in, you know? And yet it's important for other people to have those outlets, to feel like they can contribute to society and have interests and things that they can explore and be good at.
And thus the reason for art programs in school, music,
yeah,
construction, cooking,
all of that.
something
Yes,
else other than either I'm really book smart or I'm really athletic.
exactly.
Because then what?
Yeah, right.
Because then you either are or you aren't. Okay. Then developmentally, what's that next stage?
So
And
then,
that's our kind of our last one.
Yes. So this last one that we're going to talk about is identity versus role confusion.
Oh,
So
that's where most people spend the rest of their adulthood. Who am I?
Yes.
Or have
how
I?
do
What,
I fit into society?
what role have I been playing, and is it really me, or am I just? Is it my role?
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
please.
So
This is important.
this happens roughly age 12 to 18, and fidelity is the virtue that will kind of emerge from this if met successfully.
What do you mean by fidelity?
Fidelity involves being able to commit oneself to others. And
So it starts then. It doesn't happen when you're in a marriage and can't figure out how to do it.
exactly.
Interesting.
So, you know, oftentimes adolescents are looking at, okay, not only what are my thoughts, what are my beliefs, what is the core of my being, how do I fit in society? And everybody wants to fit in, but if they're confused about that, this may be the time to explore different things, such as, you know, political beliefs or religion, sexuality, that sort of thing, that they're just trying to figure out.
All of the parts of me.
Yes.
Because we're multiple united beings, and to just, you know, hone in on one thing, then we miss out developing the rest of us.
Right. Right. And then there's, you know, 3 more stages that happen
Later on.
later on.
That'll be another show.
Okay.
We'll talk about that another time. Well, you know, this has been amazing, and Andrea, as you can tell, is a very knowledgeable and amazing professional and just such a beautiful, kind soul, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join me on my Get a Life program, and she'll be back, I promise you, because I'm going to make it happen. Anyway, because we
Thank
could
you.
talk and talk and talk, but this is a limited time show, so
There we go. It's been a pleasure.
excellent. So hope you've learned a little bit about discomfort and why it's so important that we feel more of it, and how we become more when we're challenged to be more. So on that note, as I always say, may every sunrise bring more promise, and may every sunset bring more peace. Thank you, and until next time,